a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit. You have joined the Almost Unbelievable podcast with Cats and Ranty. I'm Ranty. Are you there, Cat?
I am, and I'm very, very much looking forward to today's show. I've had a little bit of an inkling from you about what the story is going to be about, so I can't wait to hear it.
Well, today's guest is Sam, and Sam is a return guest. In case you haven't noticed, Sam did a story several weeks ago now, and she's back to tell us another story from another property. How about that, Cats? Another ghost one. What do you think?
I can't wait. And Sam's story last time was great. She was such an amazing guest. She was so articulate. She was so clear in what she wanted to say. She was engaging to listen to. The story was great. So if this is going to be half as good as the next one, I really, really, really can't wait. But before we get there, I do have a little story or question for yourself. Are you ready?
Okay.
So, have you ever heard of the names Ed and Lorraine Warren?
I can't say I have there, Cats.
So Ed and Lorraine Warren are very famous self-proclaimed demonologists, and the most famous haunting that they've investigated is the famous Amityville house. Are you familiar with the Amityville murders?
Well, I don't think anybody isn't. Everyone's heard of Amityville, surely.
Absolutely, the film was legendary years ago, the remake, perhaps less so. But they've also featured in a lot of films recently, most notably the Annabelle series about the haunted doll, and they've also featured in the remake of the Enfield Haunting, which is a very famous haunting, of course, that occurred right here in the UK. Is that one you've heard of?
It is, yeah.
Well, one you might not have heard of is a murder that happened in a place called Brooklyn in Connecticut. Now, this isn't the big Brooklyn. It's actually spelt Brookline. And if you're from that area, it might be pronounced Brookline. But Brookline was a small town that had never, ever, ever had a murder until 1981. And that was the first murder in the 193 years of that town, when a certain Mr. Johnson stabbed a Mr. Bono and killed him after a heated argument. What do you think so far? True or false?
What, that the town had never actually had a murder in its entire history? I'm going to call rubbish on that. But, okay, but if it's a story that you know is true, then fire away.
Yeah, it turns out, though, I just thought that was remarkable. Every now and then you get something that's just a remarkable statistic, whether it's from sport or politics or whatever. And to me, that was remarkable. Or at least there's not been one reported murder in 193 years of that town. Anyway.
What was it? Population of 2?
Which went down to 1 after the murder. But essentially, the Mr. Johnson, who was the murderer, he claimed demonic possession. Now, he wasn't somebody who had at all been interested in the paranormal or horror films or anything like that. But 12 years prior to the murder, he woke up in the middle of the night and he was screaming and shouting that he was somehow being oppressed or attacked by a demon. He started to show signs of, read this however you want, either bruises that have been inflicted by a demon or from self-harm. Either way, he was not in a particularly good place at all. But he got treatment. He was visited by a priest. He was exorcised, etc., to get rid of this demon that was around him. And he was found guilty, although he was given a much more lenient sentence based on mental health grounds. He was found guilty. But after the exorcism, it does seem that his mental health seemed to correct itself, or he seemed to get a lot better. And he was actually released after less than 5 years in prison with the record of being a totally exemplary inmate with amazing behavior, which reflects the kind of character he was before he started having these visualizations at night and attacks, etc. So, I mean, I don't know what you think about that, whether you think that's somebody going through some sort of mental episode, or whether you think there might be something more sinister to it. But Ed and Lorraine Warren, the reason I mentioned them is that they worked with him to help rid him of these demons. That's why I brought them into it.
Well, it's interesting how that differs from the story that you told me on Kai's, I believe it was Kai's introduction. And, in that particular time, the gentleman that was quote-unquote exorcised there had been engaged in an extramarital affair, etc. So, And obviously this is a different one. This is a different type of exorcism that was performed, and the gentleman returned back to his normal state pre the possession sort of thing. So this, to me, I'm more likely to believe this one as a way of some kind of paranormal influence on the gentleman than the other story. I can't remember what that story was called, but if you want to listen to the podcast from Kai, I think it was it Hatman? Yes, it was the Hatman story. Hatman. Yeah, so if you want to go back and listen to that, anybody, and listen to that introduction there, you'll understand the parallels that I'm trying to get here. And yeah, I mean, this to me makes more sense that you could have some kind of possession that was linked in this way, because the guy prior to this had an exemplary record.
And I think either way, whichever way you look at it, whether you look at it as these people have been genuinely possessed or these people have had some sort of genuine mental illness, there's no one-size-fits-all treatment, is there? If somebody has a mental illness and somehow an exorcism is almost like the mental placebo that they need to then feel confident and be in a better state of mind, which is going to help them recover, then so be it. It's not something I'd recommend for people, but maybe there are circumstances out there where somebody's beliefs are so deeply rooted in religion or demonology that an exorcism is what they need to get over that mental hurdle to get back to full health. I am absolutely not giving any medical advice here, because I'm the last person to ask for that, by the way. Don't go around exercising your next door neighbours because, they poo on your garden or something. Please contact the relevant authorities. But anyway, that's my little story. I'm really interested to hear Sam's story. So would you mind giving a bit of a recap of Sam's first story, just so people can maybe place her, because I'm sure they'll listen to her podcast?
Well, I'm not going to spoil it for everybody. If anyone wants to go and check out Sam's other podcast, I will link it in the description. All I will say is that it was a haunted house story, and she's definitely back. She's back with another haunted house, this time a house that her mother bought. So I'm looking forward to this story.
So here we have our first returning guest on the podcast, and I'm really excited. The last story was so entertaining, we just had to have Sam back. Here she is again with the second story. I'm not too sure what it's about, but I know if it's half as good as the last one, then I'm going to be absolutely riveted. So Sam, thank you so much for coming back, and I will put myself on mute and pass myself over to you.
All right. So a few years ago, I accompanied my mom while she did this whole search to purchase a house in New Jersey. It's like a lifelong dream to have a beach house. And we arrived at this one property, and I kind of just knew instantly that she was going to buy it. It was gorgeous, it had loads of curb appeal, and there was a pool. But the house had been in foreclosure for a while, and the former family that occupied it had kind of just left without taking a lot of their belongings. There were like children's pool toys, home decor, and like just random items that kind of just were still in the house. And they, as my mother understood, would not be removed prior to sale. So it's kind of like, take it as it is. So she did end up buying the house, and she kind of had to set apart all this time to clean the house. It was absolutely disgusting, like really grimy. And repair, like every electrical appliance was in disrepair, like none of it worked. But anyway, so she put a ton of work into this beach house, and now it's kind of like the vacation house that all of our friends and family kind of frequent during warmer months. But unfortunately, the house is definitely occupied by something. Like numerous guests have reported like seeing things or sensing things or kind of paranormal events happen while staying there. Like every time my dad stays there, and it's a beach house, so we don't stay there all the time, but every time my dad stays there, he gets screaming nightmares. And I feel so bad. My trash truck just came by. So if you can hear that, I'm sorry. It's not part of the story. It's added audio. But anyway, so, just a lot of people have reported some strange things. And something just kind of feels off about the house, even since the first time I saw it with my mom, with all of those, the previous owner's stuff in the house. Just, there was a weird feeling about the house. And maybe, I just chalked it up to it hasn't been lived in a while. It doesn't have like people energy inside of it. So the only room I ever felt even somewhat safe in is in one of the downstairs living rooms. So when there are too many guests for bedrooms, I always volunteer to sleep in this living room on the couch. But my first time sleeping in an upstairs bedroom, I had a boyfriend with me, and we were given this, queen size bed to share. And one thing that's really prominent in the house is there's a ton of mirrors. All of the closets have like mirrored closeted doors, which is just spooky. They're full length. It's in every room. And so I feel like you're always kind of catching yourself in a mirror at some point in this house. And a lot of the beds are kind of set up so that if you were to wake up in the middle of the night and look over, like, you would see yourself, which I think is bad feng shui. But anyway, so I'm in this queen size bed with my boyfriend, and we are trying in vain to sleep. And we're both hearing clicking noises, and we just felt so uneasy. And we're up really late, and we had come in from out of state, so we were really exhausted. There was no reason we shouldn't be able to sleep. And so my father had this screaming nightmare at 1 a.m. And of course we just couldn't sleep after that. And, we kind of gave up. We went downstairs in the middle of the night, I think it was 2 or 3 a.m., and went to sleep in that living room that I like to sleep in, on the couches. Next day, my boyfriend leaves for the airport, and I stay back with my mom. And we're swimming in the pool out back, and I kind of just said to her, like, are you aware of the house? Like, are you aware that people kind of feel uncomfortable here? And she was a bit amused, and she was like, well, tell me more. And I was like, the house makes people feel uneasy at night. And I asked her if, like, she had gotten rid of everything from the previous owners, if she had kept some of it. And she told me then that she had kept some of it. Like, she kept some of the beachy decor. She left it on the walls, or she moved it, but she kept some of the stuff. And I just felt this, like, overwhelming seriousness come over me. And I was like, you've got to get rid of that stuff. Like, I feel like there's an energy attached to it. Like, you kind of need to get rid of it. And, she seemed interested enough, and she didn't really immediately discredit what I was saying. So I think it's possible that maybe she had kind of noticed some things on her own and maybe just sort of ignored it, as you do. So she ended up saying, well, what should we do? And I said, I don't really know. Maybe we'll go get some sage and, light some sage and wave it around the house. And we also put bowls of salt in all of the bedrooms. So that was during the day. The next night, I tried to sleep in that same bedroom that I had been in the night before with my boyfriend. And everything in the bedroom's clicking, all of the electronics. And I'm just exhausted at this point. And I kind of muttered, like, shut up, leave me alone, like, to no one in particular. And all of the clicking stopped. I mean, it was like dead silent. And I saw something in the mirrored closet doors move, like the reflection of something move. And I just was stiff with fear. Like, I couldn't have moved if I tried. I couldn't have run out of the room if I tried. I was just laying there absolutely stricken with fear. And this is the part that, like, I have a hard time retelling because it's so strange, but I, like, felt something enter me, like when you walk through a fog, but instead of the fog, like, moving around me, like, it moved into me. And I don't remember the rest of the night. Like, I think I fainted or fell asleep. But when I woke up in the morning, I felt awful. I mean, I felt horrible. Like, I dragged myself to the bathroom, and I threw up a couple of times. Even my eyesight was bleary. Like, I felt so strange. My whole body was sore. Everything ached. My back was really sore, actually, like, kind of like where my kidneys are. And I mean, I could barely get myself down the steps. I just felt like I had to get out of the house. And I only made it to the back enclosed porch before I just felt too weak to continue. And I lay there, like, on one of the chairs, sort of in and out of like almost in and out of consciousness for several hours. And I was just waiting for my mom to get back. You know, she had been at work, and I think I got up because I needed to throw up again, and I went into the kitchen, and which is on the way to the toilet, and this, I don't know how to explain it, but like something came out of me, like a mist, or it came out like sort of near like my chest, like down to my stomach, like it just felt like something like walked out of me. And I immediately was, you know, I threw up on the kitchen floor, and that's where my mom found me when she got home from work. Like I fainted on the kitchen floor. And you know, it was all very weird, and I know that all sounds very medical, like, oh, you know, food poisoning or something, but I physically felt something enter me, and I physically felt something like leave. But the illness I felt after it left me, and after, you know, my mom found me on the kitchen floor, didn't end. Like I continued to feel very unwell. And we were supposed to receive guests that night. My aunt and my uncle and my cousins were coming. And I'm a really agreeable person, and I really don't like to make waves. But I told my mom we had to go. Like, we received our guests that afternoon, and she begrudgingly packed the car, and we went to our other house in Pennsylvania. And it was crazy. Like 10 minutes into the drive, I felt relief. You know, after an hour, I was bright. I felt like color come back into me. I was hungry as a donkey. I was so hungry. I felt like I could speak again. I was laughing by the time we got to Pennsylvania. Like, the further I got from the house, the better I felt. And I really, truly believe to this day that whatever occupies the house was angry that I told my mom that it was there. Like I think it felt like attacked or something by me saying, like, you know, there's something here and we should address it. And I think it took offense to the fact that I put bowls of salt in all of the bedrooms, and that I saged the house. But anyway, since then, I'm really careful every time I'm at this beach house. And personally, I hate going there. I refuse to sleep in a bedroom unless I drug myself. I take Tylenol PM and I just knock myself out. And that's kind of my personal experience with the house. Other people have reported seeing things. The night that I left, you know, when I felt really, really unwell, I got a text from my cousin, late in the night, you know, 1 a.m. And she said, I mean, what she said, like, just my blood kind of ran cold. And she's a young girl. She was like, I think 15 at the time. And she said, do you ever see something? Like, do you ever see something when you're trying to sleep at the beach house? And I'm like, oh no. And she's like, yeah, like there's these like weird clicking sounds. And she was in a different bedroom than I had been in. She's like, I saw something. Like, I saw something move, like a black mass, like a person move. And she was just so afraid. And she's not the only one that has seen the black mass. I personally haven't seen the black mass, like a fully fledged person. The only people that have seen this like this shadow person, I suppose, are my younger cousins. They've all seen it. And a lot of them refuse to go to the beach house to this day. Like, they'll get dragged there by my aunts and uncles, and they hate it. They feel like preyed upon by it. And there's been other things that have happened too. Like, my mom has reported things as well. Like, she's not a very superstitious person, but like lights being turned on by themselves, or another weird one is that anytime she starts getting herself ready to leave the house for an extended period of time, because it's only a beach house, she's not there all the time, the alarm system will arm itself. Like, right before she's leaving, it'll arm itself as though, you know, the codes you might put in as if you were going to go to sleep. So you're arming the house against intruders. but I mean, essentially you can't get out either without setting off the alarm. And that's so strange to me. Like, it's almost like the house doesn't want my mom to leave. So there's a lot there. I'm sure that you guys are going to have lots to say. So I will leave it at that and see what your feedback is.
Wowzers. I knew it would be a good story.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, these aren't going to necessarily be specific to the story, just a couple of general questions. Just two things I want to know, and I'll tell you why later. You said at the beginning that, the house, when it be bought, there'd been like lots of old possessions left in the house. Is there a feeling that whatever's going on in the house was linked to the house or linked to the possessions that was left in there?
So I kind of thought it was the possessions. I thought it was their stuff that they left behind. I actually used to feel very sympathetic towards the house. I thought maybe the house felt just had maybe an abandonment issue. There was a bustling family that lived there full time. And a lot of those beach houses don't have that. They have people coming in and out, or, people renting here and there. But this house had a bustling family, and suddenly they were gone. So I just assumed maybe the house itself felt maybe insecure about, when is the other, shoe going to drop? When am I going to lose this family here that's, bustling about and making the house nice again? I thought it was attached to the possessions, but my mom got rid of all the stuff, and stuff still keeps happening.
And just the second, you mentioned that you felt safer in was it the bedroom downstairs or the living room downstairs for sleeping in? It was one of the rooms downstairs. You said was the only room you felt safe in. Why do you think that was? Because obviously it's in the house. Why do you think you had that one area that was just more comfortable to be in?
I actually don't know. And here's why it's also weird. I just have a really sensitive sense of smell, and so a bad smell will really affect me, make me feel quite queasy. What's strange is that living room, we can tell that the former occupants locked their dogs in there, with a baby gate or something, because they obviously had accidents on the hardwood, which is very hard to remove the scent even with sanding. But there still retains a bit of a urine odor in there. And I still prefer that room. Part of me almost thinks that the dogs took refuge in that room as well. There's something about it that feels, I'm not sure, like base when you're a kid and you're playing tag. It felt like if I could squeeze myself into one of the corners in that room, I would be safe.
So I know these questions sound irrelevant now, but are all the rooms hardwood floored?
Everything but the tiled kitchen. Yeah, everything's hardwood.
Yeah, that wasn't the answer I was hoping for. That's made my life harder. I'm going to pass you over to Ranty for a bit.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that activity seemed to pick up once you'd saged the house. We had a guest that we were talking to yesterday, and she said the same thing. She said that when she got the sage out and she started using this, whatever was happening in the house, the activity seemed to pick up too. So you're not alone there when you said that. That stuck out to me.
Yeah, I read, I was deep in a hole, I think, on Reddit, reading some things about someone who seemingly invited some stuff into their house, and they had planned to use sage. And some people, of greater wisdom and deeper in that faith system said, do not use sage. It can actually, it almost stirs up things, which is funny because it's something that everyone says to use, but it was immediate. The retaliation was just so strong.
And this illness that you felt, how would you describe it? Have you experienced anything like it? Was this the only time that you felt that kind of sickness?
It felt like a glaze. It's so hard to explain it, but it felt like there was, when I moved, whatever was, I guess, what I felt like was almost taking up residence inside of me didn't move exactly with me. It felt like there was like an edge outside of it. If I moved too quickly, it would have to almost follow me. Like there was a tail of it. It's so hard to explain. like almost like an aura, like there's parts outside of you. It didn't move fluidly with me. And no, I've never felt that kind of illness before. I just, it was so strange. And I felt, I don't know, like I felt that it didn't feel medical, if that makes sense. It didn't feel like I needed to go to the hospital. I didn't think the hospital could help me. It felt like I had ingested or taken in something that didn't belong in a body.
I guess your sixth sense kind of kicks in. Everyone has it. Everyone knows, in themselves whether or not, something's wrong or something's right, and nobody can tell them any different. And quite often your body and your own mind is the best cure, because you'll know if there's something wrong with you. And like you said, if you didn't feel the need to go to the hospital for it, well, that's probably your body telling you that. One thing I would say, obviously you've been back. I don't know why you've been back, but you've been back, and the activity has it calmed down?
No, not necessarily. I think it's continued pretty regularly. For me, I still experience lots of clicking. Anytime I seem to bring a significant other with me, I seem to be up all night, sort of almost watching over them. I just cannot sleep. Like I feel like I have to protect them in a way. But there have been other people that have reported things happening at the house to them or around them, mysterious injuries like welts on my aunt. After sleeping one night, she had welts all over her. Then they weren't bug bites; they were like welts. And my cousins have reported still seeing things.
I think Katz is probably going to want to delve in a little bit more about this clicking noise and what you tend to hear. I mean, does it sound like electric? Is it something to do with the makeup of the house? Or how would you explain it when you just say clicking noises? Where do you feel they're coming from, and what do they sound like?
It's like electrical almost. It's like when you turn on one of those old fluorescent bulbs, and before it gets to its full luminescence, it's sort of like the repeated like nee nee nee, like yeah, it's almost like if you have a fan on, one of those ceiling fans, and the cord is sort of tapping against one of the lights, almost like that. Yeah.
Can I ask, the room downstairs that you felt more comfortable in, could you hear that clicking noise as well in that room?
No, I've never experienced anything unnatural in there, except that I feel like when I'm in the room, there's nothing in there with me, but I do feel like there's things watching me from vantage points in the kitchen or in the living room. But that room seems to be like I don't know, like it doesn't seem to be a place that it can occupy very easily.
Is it slightly extended from the rest of the house, that room, somehow? Is it, what's the geography of that, if that's the right word, of the house?
That room is right below the stairs, I guess. It's below the bedrooms. Yeah, it's kind of a weird. I'm actually thinking about the way it's situated right now. I guess it is apart from the house. Yeah, because the stairs go right to the kitchen. Yeah, it is set apart from the house, and there's a laundry room and a garage right off of it.
Well, my question then, leading on from that, would be: is it kind of like an extension? Do you think it's a newer build as opposed to the house?
It very well could be. Honestly, it very well could be, because you could have a complete house without that room and without that laundry room and bathroom addition. And the garage could be standalone without those components, and it could have been added later.
So you mentioned the sound that you were hearing reminded you of, like, an old fan or something like that. Does the main part of the house, does it share some sort of air conditioning or some sort of ventilation system, something maybe even with an old fan, even if there's no fan, does it share some kind of network of tubing like that?
It does, yeah. There's forced air throughout the house, and there's also a huge forced air vent, like larger than the rest of the house, in the what I'll call the safe room. There's a huge vent right there, so you can always hear when it comes on.
And does that run through the? You said the safe room downstairs. That runs through there as well.
Yeah.
But you can't hear the clicking noise down there.
No, and the clicking noise is not. It's not. It doesn't seem to be connected to anything. Like it only happens at certain times in certain rooms. Like you'll hear it in one room, and it's almost like where there's a bunch of activity, you'll sort of feel and hear different things, but in another room you won't feel it at the same time or hear it.
And just last question, sorry. The room downstairs you're talking about, the safe room, with it being slightly separated from the house, would it be fair to say it's more enclosed than the rest of the house, so the airflow through that room won't be as free as the rest of the house?
It's kind of open floor into the kitchen, so it's pretty open.
Okay, right.
Well, that'll give us some food for thought to chew on.
Certainly have. It's a great story. Again, I knew it would be. Our first returning guest smashes it out the park again. Well done.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for coming.
Sam, that really was an amazing story. It's so good to have had you back, and I'd love to have you back again. So any more spooky events, any more spooky goings on, please get in touch. We will love to have you back at any time. But for now, it is that time that me and Ranty have to retreat into the pit and see what we make of your story. So we will bid you a fond farewell. And Ranty, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a little bit torn on this one. I was hoping for a little bit more that I could get my teeth into, something that I could say, yeah, definitely paranormal. But, I mean, there's just too many other, perhaps, things that could be going in the house that are just making it impossible to tie it into something paranormal. I don't know. I mean, obviously, we've got Sam feeling unwell when she felt that something entered into her body. Now, that to me is really unexplained, and to her as well, it also seems that she's correlating these two instances with being something paranormal. I can't definitively agree with that because it was just essentially a one-off event. And okay, sure, the feelings that she was going through, she seemed to get better the further away she went from the house. But again, time does that anyway. If you were feeling a little bit unwell for a short time with some kind of short illness, if you're driving for an hour, you're driving for an hour, and that's an hour's worth of healing that you're going through. So it could be correlated in that way, that just time made her feel better, and it wasn't the fact that she was just getting further away from the house. Okay, yeah, sure, there is a lot of activity in the house. Is it paranormal? I don't know. I'm struggling with this one, Katz. I have to say, I am struggling to tag it with a paranormal. I really am. What about you?
Well, first of all, it was a great story. Love listening to it. For me, obviously, I am the more skeptical of the two of us. Now, although I find it difficult to really believe that something can haunt a house, for me, I find it even harder to believe that something will haunt just part of a house, but not a particular room. Now, we did talk in depth about the safe room, and I did mention in the podcast the effect of infrasound and looking at the paper Ghost in the Machine that came out of Coventry University, where maybe somehow old vents or air currents are producing some sort of constant infrasound, which is heightening the feelings of anxiety, which is causing hallucinations. But I think if you're spending time somewhere where you are anxious constantly, and you're spending day after day after day after day there, then you can develop something called chronic anxiety. Now, it might not be something that you notice as a huge change in your behavior, or you might not notice it as, some sort of sudden change, but the buildup of these hormones that are causing that anxiety can create some incredibly intense effects. So if we have a look at some of the symptoms of chronic anxiety, we have headaches, we have muscle aches, we have stomach aches, excessive sweating, we have abdominal distress and sharp abdominal pains, we have nausea, diarrhea, sweaty, clammy hands, we have difficulty in concentrating, people find it extremely difficult to swallow and go to sleep. So real world physical symptoms of constantly feeling on edge. Now, If I'm going to guess, I would say possibly it's a combination of the two. I'd say that maybe there is some sort of infrasound in that house which is amplifying her emotions, making her feel a little bit on stress. We know that infrasound can cause hallucinations. We know that infrasound can cause us to also have other physical sensations like pains, etc. And if that's going to get you scared, get you a little bit anxious, she said she felt uneasy in almost all the parts of the house apart from one room. If you're constantly feeling uneasy, then is that going to build itself to chronic anxiety where you get these even bigger symptoms? And she did talk about having those physical sensations, didn't she?
She did, yes. And I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not. But let me just say one thing. I want to just jump in here and say the saging of the house, that seems to me that it triggers, from what I'm hearing anyway, if there is some kind of activity going on in a particular house, and there has been in other stories that we've talked about, where they've had these activities happening in the house and then they've saged the house, it seems to aggravate and make things worse. Now, I know that I said that I didn't find any paranormal activity here, but the idea that she saged the house and things seem to pick up, that's a kind of correlation that I can maybe tag back into some kind of paranormal activity. So that's the best I've got, Cats.
Well, at the end of the day, stories like this are fascinating, and for those people who are staunch believers in the paranormal, I'm sure you will find lots and lots and lots of reasons to believe there's a paranormal event for this. For those who are complete skeptics, I'm sure you'll find reasons to think that it's not paranormal. Does the truth lie somewhere in between the two? Well, I think this story is all about where you're perceiving it from. I'm sure if Sam was here with us now, I know she's just left, but if she was here with us now, she'd have her own take on what we've said. And I'd love to hear it because her story was great, and we'd love to have her back on and hear what she's got to say about our conclusions.
Well, I'm just going to echo what Kat said there, and that Sam is welcome back absolutely any time. And if she does ever return to the property and she does happen to capture something inside the house, maybe some kind of movement or some kind of noise, and she wants to send it over, I really hope that she does. And I would be looking for something paranormal from this story, because currently, although I can't actually label it with paranormal, I'm definitely going to say that it is, as of yet, unexplained.
Yeah, well said, Ranty. Well, it is time for us to go now, but anyone who's listening, if you want to come on and be a guest, please check out the links in the description. That'll be where you can find us. It's also where you can find all our social media, including our Patreon, where we place images and videos that previous guests have sent to us. So if you want to check out some footage of ghosts or orbs or whatever, that is the place to go. But for now, I am going to go, and I'll see you later.
We'll see you later. Take care.